Hi guys, welcome to CrackU's YouTube channel. I hope you all are doing well. In this video, we will be basically looking or learning about all things XAT. So this video will be a complete guide for XAT 2027. In this video, we will be discussing the exam pattern, we'll discuss what are the cutoffs for the top colleges, and also we'll discuss the syllabus in detail, where we will be discussing how XAT as an exam is different from CAT, what are the commonalities and what are the sections which are different for that. So this will basically be a one-stop video for all of you guys who are seriously preparing for that. Okay, so now let's get started with the overview. So that as an exam has 75 plus 20, which is 95 questions, and these 95 questions we need to finish in 170 plus 10, which is 180 minutes, or essentially 3 hours. So that, unlike CAT, is an exam for 3 hours. CAT is for 2 hours. That is for 3 hours. Now, there's a reason why I've written the split that way, because the paper of XAT is divided into two main parts. The first part has 75 questions. The second part has 20 questions. And for the first part, we basically get 170 minutes. And for the second part, for the remaining 20 questions, we get a 10 minutes. Now, if we talk about the marking scheme, we get a +1 mark for every correct answer and a minus 2.25, as in like 1/4 of the mark is lost for every incorrect answer. XAT has this thing which is not there in any of the other popular MBA exams, is that they deduct marks for skipping questions as well. So what the thing is, you can skip 8 questions, but after the 8th question that you skipped, every 9th, 10th, 11th question that you skip, for each of those questions, you basically incur a minus 0.1. XAT ka split goes something like this. For every correct answer, you get a +1. For every incorrect answer, you get a minus 0.25. And for skipping more than 8 questions, every additional unattempted question will get you a minus 0.10. So in that, it becomes very important to keep that in mind. We don't skip a lot, but that also doesn't mean we have to appear for everything, so that we don't incur this marks anyway. Because if you just blindly appear for every question, there's a big chance that you will get them wrong, and so instead of that 0.10, you will be incurring a 0.25 negative mein. That is something we don't want to do. We need to basically have a balance, like how many should we be attempting and how many we can skip safely. Now, if we talk about the paper, so the paper is basically divided into two parts, as we said. The first part is the core sections, which has verbal and logical ability. We call it like VALR. Next, we have the decision making section, which is DM. This is a section which is completely XAT specific. No other exam has this section. And the third section is quantitative ability and data interpretation, which is called QADI. Now, these three sections are the core sections which fall in the part 1. For solving these three sections, you get 170 minutes and a total of 75 questions from these three. We'll look into the split and we'll look into everything next. The part 2 is the general knowledge part. Now, GK ka part mein we have 20 questions, and for those 20 questions, we basically have 10 minutes. Once you finish the part 1, the paper automatically shifts to part 2. There is no logging out, logging in, anything like that. So immediately after you finish the first 170 minutes, the part 1 will end and the part 2 will start. That is how that operates. Now let's look into this split for the 75 questions. So part A, as we discussed, we have the verbal ability and logical reasoning, VALR. This one has 26 questions. And decision making has 21 questions. QADI has 28 questions. So in a total, we get 75 questions, and these we need to finish in 170 minutes. Now, the good thing about that is there is no sectional time limits in the part 1. What happens in CAT is we do VRC, the first part 40 minutes, then LRDI another 40 minutes, then Quants another 40 minutes. Here, for these three sections, which are like the core sections, there is no time limit. So basically you can do a little bit of VRC. Chalo, you are like bored, so like you move to QA, and then you can move back to DM, and there's a freedom to switch or toggle between sections. But that is only for part A, because once these 170 minutes end, you automatically shift to part B, which has general knowledge. And for GK, we have 20 questions which needed to be finished in 10 minutes. So that is the flexibility that XAT offers. Like you can switch between the sections, but also we need to be careful. We need to be wary of how we are attempting the questions. It should not be that you are spending a lot of time just in one section, because for the top colleges like XLRI, like if you are preparing for that, obviously the dream is XLRI, right? So if you want to get into XLRI, they have sectional cutoffs as well. So we need to make sure that we give proper weightage to all three of the sections so that we don't miss out on the sectional cutoffs. Hai na? So now let's discuss the cutoffs. So if we look into the marks versus percentile, again, like for that, this marks versus percentile thing, this has been collated from like a lot of different sources, because they don't really release an official something of that sort. So like various sources all over the internet, we collated them and made this table, but it gives like a rough approximation. This is at best a good approximation of the marks versus percentile thing. So for that, 99.9 percentile XAT 2026, which is last year or this year. So XAT 2026, which is like 25-26 ka cycle mein, because that takes place in January, right? So 2026, 99.9 percentile was at around a 44 marks. So 44 marks. So there are 75 questions. So 75 questions means the maximum marks I can get is 75 marks. Now, one thing to note here is for XLRI, for the shortlisting thing, they do not actually consider the general knowledge ke marks. So when they give you that final percentile, there the general knowledge marks are not taken into account. So basically, all the percentiles and all the marks, they are around this 75 questions only. These 75 questions, which is like 75 marks, out of that, what marks you need to get the percentiles is discussed. 44 marks, that is like 44 out of 75. Right, 99 percentile was somewhere around 35, 36. 96 again becomes a very important bracket for that, because 96 is usually the cutoff for general, they don't have caste-based reservations, but they have male and engineers. So for a engineering male, 96 is the cutoff for their flagship BM program. So 96 percentile was attained at somewhere around 31. And then we have the others also, 75 was somewhere around 19. So that tells me ki if you want to get into Excel, the safe score would be somewhere around 31 to 35. This should be a safe score to get, and that is something which you get the pattern all over as well. 2023 was relatively easier, so the cutoffs went through, like the marks went through as the upper. But if you see like 33, 27, 35, so 31 to 34 should be a safe score. But obviously, if you want to score higher, you can do that. But at least this much is something you should be scoring if you want to get a Excel ka call. Now let's look into the sections wise split, because Excel has the other colleges, they don't really have that as much, but Excel has that. Like you need to have certain cutoffs, certain percentiles you need to get in sections, otherwise you will not be eligible. Talking about the sectionals, this is again a collated data, so this is at best an approximation. So 99 percentile in quants required a 17 or 18 marks. The cutoffs last year went around like 84, 85, 82, 84, 85 were like the sectionals basically. So that tells me that this is the bracket which I need to think of. And these were the marks. DM last year was, a lot of people scored around the same marks. So the percentiles were a bit cluttered around like this 11 to 12. Like 11 to 12 marks, there was like a lot of variations in percentiles. But yeah, VRC or VALR, here that remains somewhat fixed. So like anything above 10, like an 11 or something should be enough to clear the cutoffs. Similarly for quants, anything above the 10 or 11, like a 13 or a something, that should be enough to get clear of the cutoffs for Excel. Now we look into the top colleges for that. Like if you are someone who's preparing for that, obviously the dream is XLRI Jamshedpur. They also have a campus in Delhi NCR. They offer BM, which is business management, MBA in BM, like business management. That requires a 95 or 96 percentile plus. That is for engineering males. The cutoffs go a little down for females, a little down for non-engineering males, but for BM it remains somewhat same for engineering and non-engineering males. For women, females, it goes a little down. And the HRM program requires somewhere around a 92 to 95%. Other than XLRI, we also have a few good options to choose from via Excel, via XAT. We have a dedicated video as well where we've discussed what are the colleges at what percentile bracket you can get into them, and what is the fees and what is the package you can get, like basically the ROI and everything that has been discussed. So do check that out as well. Now if we talk into this list, we have XIMB. XIMB requires around a 91.93 percentile. We have IMT Ghaziabad, we have MICA. MICA is very much known for marketing. We have 4School, TAPMI, KJ Somaya, and Goa Institute of Management. All of these basically fall in the 80 to 85 percentile ka bracket. Now let's discuss the XLRI ki cutoffs. Like as we were saying, XLRI requires some sectional. So these are basically it. For the bachelor's male, male engineer or non-engineer, you need at least an 82, 82 and an 85 in the section. Females is 78, 78, 78. This data you will actually find in the XLRI ka portal as well. Yeah, so you can basically read it out. It's basically that. Now let's discuss the syllabus, which is the main point of discussion here. So that syllabus we've divided into 3 sections, 4 basically. So we have the VALR section, we have the decision making section, we have the QADI section. Talking about the VALR section, the first thing, the more important thing is reading comprehension. Now, reading comprehensions in XAT are different from reading comprehensions in CAT, not in spirit, but a little bit in technicalities. What I want to say is, reading comprehension ke passages are relatively smaller. CAT has around 500 words for a passage. That goes for like a 350, 380 word ka passage. But CAT can have sometimes very informative passages, like the passages which are purely scientific, purely informative, informational. That usually goes for somewhat philosophical, somewhat analytical passages. The writing is like a bit stronger, it's a bit more tight. So to decipher that passage actually takes a little bit more time, in my opinion. Questions are lesser. CAT has like 4 questions per RC, XAT has 3 questions per RC, but the questions can be a little wordier. They can be trickier as well. To basically, because the passages that they give, all of them have like a flavor of philosophy going on. Even if it's a science passage, it's not going to be very scientific. It's going to be like something around the philosophy of science. So because there's a flavor of philosophy going on, so the questions can become thoda sa tricky. So that is there. Next important thing is critical reasoning, and critical reasoning is also important from RCs, because RC questions also have a lot of this critical reasoning thing happening. Now what is critical reasoning? Critical reasoning is like something like which of the following assumptions is needed for it to work, like what is the necessary assumption here, or it can be something like what strengthens this, what weakens this, or they can give something like a small passage, 150, 180 words, and they tell us what of these can be drawn from it, what conclusion can we draw from this passage, or like what can be inferred from the passage. All those kind of things fall under this bracket of critical reasoning. Now, critical reasoning is something which is somewhat absent in CAT. So if you're preparing for that, I would say critical reasoning becomes one of the more important sections to take into consideration, because if you're not well prepared in critical reasoning, you'll probably not do very well in the VALR section for that. Next, we have the Parajumbles. Again, in CAT, we have theta Parajumbles. Theta means like you have to type in the answer. In that, you basically get options. Like, 5 options are there, arrangements are given to us. But that is the catch, like 5 sentences are also there. CAT has 4 sentences ka theta parajumble. XAT has 5 sentences ka parajumble. And obviously there are like trade-offs. Like, some might say like, okay, it's easier because you already have the options. Some say it is more difficult because essentially you get confused. Like, okay, this arrangement also makes sense, that arrangement also makes sense. So obviously there's the trade-off. Para completion from the XAT VALR, I would say, is the relatively easier part. You consider the other 3, para completion is easier. It's basically like they'll remove the last line or something and they'll say which of these lines essentially completes the paragraph. Now the good thing about that is once you read the paragraph, you somewhat get an idea in what direction the passage is moving. So once you figure that out, in the direction the passage move kar raha hai, then you can basically pick out the line, and this becomes relatively easier when you compare to the other 3. Next, we have grammar and sentence correction. This is where a lot of people crave. They think like, okay, last time we did grammar was in like class 10th or 12th, so we don't really remember that. So grammar and sentence correction ke questions, they usually have 2 of them. They'll give like 5 or 6 sentences and they'll give options like which of these are correct. Just say A, B, C, D, E, F. If they have 6 sentences given to us, and they'll give like which of these sentences are correct. Is it A, B, F, or is it like B, C, D? They'll make the different combinations and such. You need to pick out which are correct or which are incorrect. Sometimes they do that also. Which of these are grammatically incorrect? So you need to pick them. The thing with grammar and sentence correction is they are a little bit predictable. What I mean is that has a pattern for them. Like these are, the set rules of grammar and these are the set rules of sentence correction that we will be asking you from, and that pattern repeats every single year. So we basically at CrackU, we have prepared a list of things. Like what are the things we need to check for? We need to check for the subject verb agreement. We need to check if the tense is correct. We need to check if there's a preposition error. There's like a list. So basically every sentence you can like run through that list. Like, okay, this is there. No, this is not there. And once you've like checked off all of them, if you find an error, obviously that's an incorrect sentence. But once you check through the list and like you didn't find any error as such, you can basically say like this sentence is correct. So just like that, we have like a lot of tips and tricks for the critical reasoning as well. So if you're someone who is like serious about that, I would highly recommend you to go check out our that course. The link will be there in the description. It is designed by Saili ma'am, which you guys might know. If you don't, I'll tell. She has been the XAT topper for like so many years now, and she personally designs that set. She personally designs the course structure. She takes live classes. We have recorded lectures as well. We also have a mock series. We have the question banks for you to practice. She basically gives her ideas like how you're supposed to approach a particular section, how you can basically maximize the scores. So if you want to know more about the course, you can definitely reach out to us. You'll get the link in the description. Now, after the grammar and sentence correction, we have vocab-based questions. These are basically fill in the blanks. Like they'll give like 2 or 3 sentences. They'll put out like 2 or 3 words as blanks, and they'll ask which of these options covered fits them best. Now that also you don't need to like artificially develop your vocabulary for it. What we can do is like go on a contextual basis, like try to understand what the context is saying, and once we understand what the paragraph is about or what the sentence is going to talk about, we can basically, using elimination again, find the word. So these sections, these 4, although you might think, okay, these are like the relatively new sections, these will be more daunting, but these are not. What we need to focus on the most from the VALR section is critical reasoning, because critical reasoning comes in RCs, it comes as individual questions as well. So this becomes the most important part to focus on when considering VALR for that. Next, we have the decision making set. Now this is the star maker. This is a section which is totally new for an average CAT aspirant. This is a section which you will not find in any other exams as such. The thing with this is you'll probably not score a lot here. So do we not prepare for it? No, we have to prepare for it because we need to clear the sectionals. The thing with the section is there can be ambiguities. And when I say ambiguities, I mean what is decision making essentially? Decision making is like you are given a premise, like a case is given to a sub case, and then you have to make a decision like what should be the next thing to do, what is the best course of action, all those kind of questions. Now there is the ambiguity that comes. Like what I might think is the correct approach here, the paper setter might not think that. So a lot of people actually get confused in this. But recently, Sally ma'am spoke to the Zatka convener. He basically said how they are like trying to like make it a bit more structured now. They have reduced a lot of ambiguity. That is true. Like if you consider the last 2-3 years papers, you will see like a lot of ambiguity has been reduced. You basically can figure out the structured plan for attempting a decision making question is quite simple. Basically, you need to figure out who are the stakeholders, as in like who are the people that are involved in this. You need to figure out the course. Like you need to figure out the stem. Like what is the question asking us to do? And that is a thing which people miss out a lot. We need to read the question properly. It says look, what should be done to maximize the profits for the company. And when they say something like maximize the profits, they're making it sure other things you can like consider them to be like a tier 2 priority. The first priority here should be maximizing the profit. So for DM also, Sally ma'am has basically designed like this whole framework. If you want to like learn it from her, you can obviously check out her YouTube videos where she's put it out. Like she teaches basically what is the framework. And for like more guidance, if you want, you can obviously check out our course. Looking into the types of decision making sets that we can have, we have the ethical dilemma. Like if I do this, then this person is getting an advantage, but the other person is losing something. If I don't do this, then this person is losing something. So how do I make the decision? Those kind of things. Ethical dilemma. HR related, let's say someone in the company was found to be like stealing, accused of stealing, embezzling from the company. So what should be the HR be doing? Should he like fire him, or like should she do something else? Those kind of things. Operations and strategy. What is the best thing to do? How do we like build the business? Which avenue should we invest in? Those kind of things. Personal behavior, plan of action, and ordering of facts. Personal behavior is basically like personal decisions. So what should I be doing personally? Plan of action is like and ordering of facts. These are basically like sequencing of events. Like they are telling us these are the 5 things that the CEO needs to do. What should be the order in which they should be done? So you need to figure that out. Those kind of things. So you do more questions, you get an idea like what these are. DM section has become much less subjective if you consider the last 2 or 3 years. We basically have like this proper template, like what we should be doing, right? And if you follow that, you actually get decent marks here. The third section is Quant. Now Quant ka, it is different from CAT in 1 or 2 areas. Let's look into the arithmetic. Algebra, pretty boilerplate, it remains similar. Arithmetic as in profit and loss, simple interest, compound interest, mixtures and solutions, allegations, time, speed, distance, algebra, time and work, all that stuff. Algebra, we have logarithms, we have the linear equations, inequalities, the pretty boilerplate stuff. Geometry, somewhat similar, like we have the circles and the triangles and everything, but the one additional part is trigonometry. Trigo in CAT does not come as a very direct thing. Like they will not ask you this or that, like altogether just a trigonometry question is very rare in CAT. But in that, at least for the last 2-3 years, we've seen one question on heights and distances. So one question comes which tells me like, okay, if I learn heights and distances properly, which is a fairly simple topic to begin with, then at least I know one question I'll be able to solve. Then we have number system, modern math. Again, pretty similar modern math number system like remainder theorems, and like for modern math we have the APGP like the progressions, we have say permutations and combinations, we have a little bit of probability. Venn diagrams and set theory. Again, Venn diagrams, you can call them to be under modern math only. Set theory very rarely comes in CAT ka quants, but they do have it in CAT ka LRDI section, right? Set based questions. And tables and charts. Tables and charts are usually pure DI based, but they can give like very difficult charts. So LR component is somewhat missing here. You don't get a lot of logical reasoning. The DI part, the QA DI is mostly purely data interpretation only. It's not a lot of logical reasoning that is needed. Like last year, 2026, we had that sunburst chart. So if you could figure out how to read that chart, and if you could, like, basically identify the data points, you would have been easy. Like, it would have been an easy question. The thing with DI here is it can be a lot calculation intensive. It can be somewhat time taking. Like DI takes up a lot of time. So for attempting quants, it is always advisable to do the 1 mark questions first. DI they take a lot of time, and they are like three question sets only. So that might take up a lot of time. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you are attempting all the questions, like at least enough so that you get a proper cutoffs, and you also need to make sure how we can maximize. So for that, we also have like a separate video where we've discussed the tips and tricks that we are required to basically get a 99 percentile in that, where we've discussed like what should be the ideal approach, what should be like the proper attempt rates, like these many questions you should be attempting at least, and what should be the order of doing things. So if you want to check that out, you can do that. It's available in our YouTube channel. The link will be there in the description. And finally, we have the GK section. Now the GK section has no negative marking, which is a good thing. So 20 questions, you get 10 minutes. There is no negative marking, which is a good thing. So basically, and what happens in GK is either you know something or you don't know. So there is not a lot of time to think also. So 10 minutes, someone might think like 20 questions for 10 minutes is a little less. But the thing is, either you know the answer or you don't know the answer. So you anyways just mark and move on. So GK ka, and what they ask is relatively like pretty standard. They'll ask you about the current affairs. They'll ask the static GK, like in which states does the Brahmaputra flow in, or something like who is the first Prime Minister of India, something like that. The static GK. We have questions related to business and economy, but like all news only, business and economy, international relations, polity, geography, history, and awards and sports. Pretty boilerplate, pretty standard. These are the things you actually get in exams. So yeah, that is basically the whole of XAT syllabus. It is similar to CAT in a lot of areas, but there are some areas which are different. Some we discussed while we were discussing the syllabus as such, but let's look into it. Like, what are the very specifics which we need to focus on? So if you are someone who's preparing for CAT, you'll get a lot of things common, but there will be some things which are unique, and those things we need to prepare. Now, considering the common things, we have RCs, like we discussed. Like essentially the idea remains similar. How do we pick the correct option? How do we eliminate the wrong options? All those things basically remain the same in CAT as well as in XAT, just that the flavor of the passage goes a little different. It's a little bit philosophical in the XAT side. CAT RCs are not that philosophical, shorter and all. We discussed that. The options can be a little bit wordier, can be a little bit denser. Parajumbles, again similar, but CAT has theta parajumbles, but XAT gives us the options. And most of QADI. There's not a lot to learn in QADI because most of it is similar except for the trigger part. The trigger part is something like the heights and distances specifically that we should be knowing. We are going for that. Now, if we look into the differences, decision making, obviously this is the section which is unique to that only, and iske liye we definitely need to prepare. If we don't prepare properly for decision making, we can basically kiss our chances of going into XLRI goodbye, because you will need to have to clear the cutoffs if you want to get into XLRI. Second thing, we have something called poem RCs in XAT. So what they do basically is like they'll give a short poem, sometimes a long one also, and they'll give you 2 questions from the poem. One question is usually on what is the poem about, and like the main idea of the poem, which can be inferred somewhat. Like once you read the poem, kind of you get an idea like how we can approach or what is the author trying to say here. So from that you can basically build on the second question as well. We have discussed the strategies, like how do we go about approaching poems, because poems are something which are not normal passages, right? So to understand them actually takes Thoda time. So we have discussed strategies for that. There's usually one poem with like two questions. So that is there. Cartoons and memes, these are basically, satires. They'll give an image and they'll ask you what is being conveyed in the image. So it can be something, like very interesting questions, like they have done it for the last 2 years now, and obviously they'll probably do it in the next coming year as well. You can check them out. You can check out the previous year questions at our website. So there you can find it. Like cartoon and memes, one question it comes, they'll give an image and they'll ask you like what it is about, what is being said, and we make it a point to include those in our mocks as well. Like every XAT mock that you give in CrackU, we have at least one. We actually stick very closely to the actual XAT ka pattern, and we make sure that you have one cartoon and meme ka question as well. Critical reasoning, yeah, as we were discussing, critical reasoning also becomes a very important part of the verbal. For that, this is something which is not there explicitly in CAT, although like now they do have like a little bit of critical reasoning questions, but explicitly critical reasoning, what should be the course of action, or like what should be a necessary assumption for this to hold true, or like what is the logical conclusion that we can derive. All those things, not very overtly, they don't come a lot in CAT, but in that they do, so we need to prepare for this as well. Different things, again we have the grammar and vocab thing. They don't have a lot of vocab. Even if they have a vocab question in CAT, they'll do it like they'll give a passage, and in the passage they'll pick a word, and like based on the context of the passage you need to figure out what this word means. Now the thing with that is, when you read the area, you kind of get an idea what this word probably means. So CAT ke vocab questions, and also they are very rare. Usually there will be like one question out of the 24. That may they do two fill in the blanks, and both the fill in the blanks are basically vocab based only. So this is something we need to prepare for. Obviously, reading helps, and that should be the area, that should be the avenue how we improve our vocabulary. Because artificially, learning like what Par Made Easy or any of those books, that can be a challenging thing. So reading actually helps. Like you read a lot, you improve your GK section as well, and you also improve your vocabulary. And grammar ka, as we said, we basically have these things. This is a checklist. Like these things we need to check for, and you can get them. Trigonometry, as I was saying, trigonometry heights and distances is the thing which does not really come in CAT, but that may at least one question is there. Another thing is probability. Now probability, for the last 7-8 years, we've not seen a single question of probability in CAT. But that may aata hai. So while preparing for that, we should be looking for that as well. We should be learning what the basics of probability are. So yeah, that is it, guys. That is basically the differences and the commonalities between CAT and XAT. If you have any other queries about XAT, if I missed out on anything, please let us know in the chats. We'll be more than happy to answer them for you. And also do check out our XAT course. As I said earlier, this was specifically designed by Saili ma'am. So you basically know you're getting the best, because when a XAT topper, and not like just 1 year ka topper, multiple years ka topper is designing the course, you know for a fact you will be learning a lot there. So do check it out. The links will be there in the description. And thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next one.